I am putting together this video for your presentation number 3 in class, your PowerPoint presentation. I'm putting this together because I want to make sure you understand the organizational scheme that I want you to follow. It is exactly the scheme that I followed in my 60-minute presentation on fear, lies, and discernment. But I do want to be absolutely clear on what it is that you're supposed to do. So you see this cursor moving around here. This is my PowerPoint presentation, and over here to the right is the PDF that I sent to you. It's the organizational scheme that I followed over here in my PowerPoint presentation. Now I'm going to show you how this works. Now you see how I started. This was a quotation from the Bible. And then if you go over here to the right, you will see that you have 3 choices: a quote, a startling statement, which I did not use, a story or illustration, which I did not use, a rhetorical question, which I did not use, but I did use this quotation that you see here, and you see it here. This is on slide 3 of my particular PowerPoint. Yours doesn't have to be on slide 3, of course. So you have 4 choices: a quote, startling statement, illustration, or rhetorical question. I happen to use a quote. So that's how you begin. Now, the next thing that you will be looking for in my particular presentation is the thesis. And that is on the slide here, happens to be number 6. Pardon me. Yeah, the thesis, it is in number 5. Okay, you see it is one sentence, a statement. Fear, lies, discernment, what I learned during last year's worldwide declared pandemic. And you see that on my slide here. You see it on my scheme here, so that you will know that it's supposed to have start with one of these 3-4 ways, and then you are to work your way to a thesis, just like I did. And in this particular case, it happens to be on slide 5 with mine. So you can see over here, looking on the presentation, that the first thing that we're going to look at is fear. The second thing we're going to look at is lies. And the third thing we're going to look at is discernment. We're going to look at all 3 of those. So I then go to where I actually get into the evidence of the speech. And this happens to be in mine on slide 6. And you will see that it is over here on the PDF. So I'm wanting you to use the PDF for your particular speech, for your particular 3 points, maybe even 4 points, but your particular 3 points. And notice that I use the word first. That is a transition word, and I want you to use that very word. And in this particular case, from my thesis statement, fear, lies, and discernment, this is number 1, fear. First, there was fear. Okay, and then following that, there's all kinds of evidence and explanation about the fear, which you may have, if you've seen my presentation, the 60-minute presentation, you will have seen that already, or you should see it before you call it quits, and you have a full understanding, hopefully, of what I expect of you organization-wise. So I have now finished with first all the explanation, examples, evidence, and sources. And now that I finished that, it's time to get to the second point, which you see here on my slide, which you see here reflected also on the PDF, so you will know how to do your slides. On my particular one, this happens to be on slide 11. It doesn't have to be that way on yours, of course, but I do want you to use the transition word second, and I do want you to use the whatever your second point is. And in my particular one, it was lies. Okay, so then let's go down and look at The next point, which we go down to in my particular presentation, slide 26. Yes, there we are. And you'll see the PDF here. It reflects that on the PDF, and you will see that on my presentation. Now, I don't expect you to produce a PDF like I have done. This is just so that you understand the organization. What I do expect is for what you see on this PDF, you will have in your presentation, just like I have it in mine. And so the PDF is to make sure that you have an organization that I want you to have. So we've covered first, second, third, and in each of those cases where we have the transition word, and then we have the item from the thesis statement, fear, lies, and discernment. See, fear, lies, and discernment. And then in each one of them, explanation, examples, evidence, and sources. Now we're ready to wrap up the speech. So let us go on down to number 35 where you can see it. I'll get to it in a second. So here is the summary. Here is the summary. And so what I've got to do is summarize what I've already explained in however much time I took, provide a brief summary of what I've already talked about. Here you introduce, quote, here you say what you're going to talk about. Here is where you talk about it, first, second, third, and here's where you summarize what you have just talked about. So now we've got to look at how to finish it, how to conclude it. So we'll go to the next slide. In conclusion, you'll notice we used first, second, third. In summary, in conclusion, now we're at the concluding part. And you have the same four choices as before. You have a quote, a startling statement, a story or illustration, or a rhetorical question, a way of ending it. And I happen to choose a quote again. And so the quotation was anonymous. It's easier to convince people of a lie than to convince them that they have been lied to. So you have, in review, what you've done here on the right in the PDF, what you've done here on the right in the PDF, what you will have done here on the right in the PDF. You'll follow this method for what you will then transform into a PowerPoint. And it's the PowerPoint that I want to see. And I want to see starting in one of these starting in one of these four ways. I want to see a thesis in one statement. I want to see first, second, and third as transition words for each item in your thesis statement. And then as you're bringing it to an end, I want you to summarize, and I want you to use the word in summary. And then when you finish summarizing, I want you to say in conclusion, and then choose one of these four ways to end. Now that should make rather clear what it is that I expect of you, organization-wise. So if you've already put it together, all you have to do is organize it according to this method that I show you here, and it is reflected over here in my PowerPoint. Okay? It is reflected absolutely over here. So if you just use this PDF as your guide for producing your PowerPoint, for organizing your PowerPoint, you will be in absolutely good stead. So I'm going to look for all of these things when I see your speeches next week, and I hope that this answers any questions you might have had regarding organization or what it is that I expect of you.